Friends, today is November 14th, and this is a very special day in India because today is the Children's Day, which is the birth anniversary of Jawaharlal Nehru, who was India's first Prime Minister and also one of the key leaders of Indian National Congress and a great freedom fighter. And Nehru is generally seen as the founder of modern India and the man who believed in secular ideology and progressive and socialist policy. And Nehru is also the man who is seen as a modernizing leader and who is always opposed to superstitions, irrationality, and something that is very bad in tradition. So, Nehru is seen as the man who believes in modern idea and who is a big supporter of reconstructing India on modern foundations, and the man who believed in the power of big planning, industrialization, and a society based on secular values. We know it very well that in recent past, Hindutva ideology, the Hindu nationalist, is in power, and I think in last 10 years we have seen that Nehru has been increasingly attacked by Hindutva forces or Hindu right-wing forces. People easily forget this fact that when the first government of Nehru was formed soon after independence, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, who was one of the main leaders of Hindu Mahasabha, which was a Hindu right-wing organizations, joined Nehru's ministry, and he was minister for a couple of years, but later he resigned, and after that Jan Sangh was formed. So Nehru's relations with communal forces, Hindu right-wing forces, Hindutva forces have been very controversial, and Nehru has been attacked by the Hindutva forces led by the BJP and RSS for a long time. And even under Narendra Modi government, Nehru has been particularly attacked on social media. His way of life, his style, his secular attitude, and he has been seen as the leader who has not appreciated Indian values and culture. This is what the criticism of the Hindu right wing. On the other hand, Nehru has been seen as a man who established democracy in this country, who was opposed to reactionary ideology, who was opposed to RSS, Hindu Mahasabha, and all reactionary ideology, the man who supported, who fought for secular values. So, what I am going to do today is to remember what Nehru has to say on secularism, what Nehru has to say on communalism, and how Nehru has critiqued Hindutva or Hindu right wing forces. So, in this small discussion, I'll be talking about Nehru's views on communalism, secularism, and nationalism. And I'll be talking about how Nehru has critiqued Hindu Mahasabha and Hindu right, and how his critique is very much legitimate to a large extent, but there is also some problem with that critique because sometimes the ideology of secularism and nationalism are not used against countering mm, communal ideology, sectarian ideology, Hindutva ideology, but sometimes these ideologies go against the interest of marginalized communities or minority communities who would like to assert their community identity because they fear majoritarian culture. So I'll be dealing with these topics very briefly, but let me first start with an article which Nehru wrote in Tribune, and basically he was dealing with the issue of communalism, and his attack was on Hindu nationalist forces. So I have got this article printed in Purushottam Agrawal's book, that is Who is Bharat Mata, on history, culture and the idea of India, a speaking tiger, 2019, New Delhi. So Nehru's Tribune article, which was in fact published on November 30, 1933, in that article he takes up the issue of communalism, and this this article has been reprinted in Purushottam Agrawal's book, Who is Bharat Mata, on history, culture and the idea of India, a speaking tiger, 2019. So in this article, in Tribune article in 1933, Nehru has criticized Hindu Mahasabha, and he has argued that Hindu Mahasabha cooperated with British Raj for communal gains. So Nehru is critical of Hindu Mahasabha along with reactionary organizations among Muslims, and his argument is that these reactionary organizations, Hindu Mahasabha, and those which are led by Muslim elites, they are basically not fighting for the freedom of the country. Instead, they cooperate with British Raj for their petty and communal gains. And Nehru said that the nationalist forces like Congress and nationalist force like himself was fighting against the British Raj. On the other hand, Hindu communalists argue that, according to Nehru, that it is futile to fight the Raj, the British Raj, as it is very strong. Therefore, Hindu Mahasabha was seeking for the British favor. So you could see here that how Nehru has created a division between secularist forces, which are led by the Congress party, and the communalist forces, which are led by the Hindu Mahasabha. And secularist forces are fighting against the British Raj, while the communist forces led by Hindu Mahasabha are seeking favor from the British Raj, and they are cooperating with British Raj. So Hindu Mahasabha has also been criticized by Nehru for its opposition to Hindu Muslims unity. So the Congress party stood with Hindu Muslims unity. Nehru and Gandhi stood for Hindu Muslims unity, while Hindu Mahasabha was working for creating division between Hindu and Muslims. So we could see here in today's discourse also, the Congress party would argue that it is the party which believes in unity among people from different religions. On the other hand, it would criticize the BJP for creating division. And the way Rahul Gandhi, Congress leader, has taken out Padyatra, he has also popularized the slogan that he is opening Mohabbat ki dukaan, I think the shop for love amid nafrat, amid hatred, which is being propagated by the rival, the BJP. So the BJP, according to Rahul Gandhi, is spreading nafrat, hatred, while the Congress party and himself, they are for love. So the same Nehru's same thing is also being uttered, argued by the Nehru, that Hindu Mahasabha is basically working for the division, for disunity, while the Congress party is working for Hindu and Muslim unity. And Nehru has also said that the communist forces believed in the ideology of divide and rule, and they cooperate with the ruling classes, that is the British Raj, while the Congress party tries to bring people together, cutting across religious line against the British rule, which the Congress believed that the Raj is not working for the benefit of the Indians, but the Raj is exploiting the Indian masses. But the Hindu Mahasabha is against Hindu Muslims unity, and Hindu Mahasabha is basically seeking cooperations and favor from the British rule. So Nehru has also criticized Hindu Mahasabha for its opposition to Gandhi and Gandhian philosophy, particularly Gandhi's non-cooperation movement. And Nehru has said that Hindu Mahasabha is also increasing the fear of Muslim communalism. Muslim communalists and Muslim communalists are also trying to create distrust among Muslims against the Hindus. So it is a vicious cycle, according to Nehru, that Hindu Mahasabha and its communalism is creating the breeding ground for the Muslim communalism. In other words, we could say that majoritarian communalism is feeding into minority communalism, and the minority communalism, on the other hand, creating distrust. So Nehru is very much critical of Hindu Mahasabha, and Nehru has also said that Hindu Mahasabha is silent about the repressive measures of the British rule. So Nehru is saying that the Mahasabha is seeking cooperation, and the way Mahasabha is trying to gain favor from the British rule. In this process, the organization, the communist organization, the Hindu communist organization has completely forgotten the fact, the bigger reality, that the British regime has been very, very repressive to Indians, but that repressive elements have been ignored by the British Raj, by the Hindu Mahasabha for petty interest, for communal interest. On the other hand, Congress party is opposing the repressive measure of the British rule. So Nehru was therefore in support of the fusion among the Hindus, the Muslim, the Sikh, and other identity, and he believes that other identity should be subordinated to the issue of the national identity. So here, this argument of the Nehru is very important, where he is saying that let's people from different faith should come together and they should try to give up, and if they do not want to give up, at least they should try to achieve some kind of a fusion, and they should try to construct a new identity, the bigger identity, the national identity. For the Nehru, national identity is very progressive, while let's say the religious identity is very, very negative. This is the point where I would like to come back and show my disagreement, that how this idea of Nehru is not always very helpful to the interest of the minority, because sometimes the idea of secularism and universalism, sometimes they create impediments in the path of the minority community when they want to live along with their minority identity. So sometimes the minority identity is being eroded by the very process of national identity, and this is where the mistrust, the alienation are developed among the minority community. As far as Nehru is concerned, that communalist forces, Hindu communist forces, should be criticized. Here, Nehru is absolutely justified. But the way the secularist ideology, or maybe the universalist ideology, they speak against the smaller identity. Sometimes this argument is not very progressive, in a sense that the so-called universal identity can work, and sometimes it has worked, and it may work in favor of the majority identity. So the philosopher would argue, the philosopher who is critical of a universalist ideology would argue that universal ideology is secretly coded in favor of the majority community. So the critique of the universalist ideology would argue that the better policy would be the diversity, pluralism, where the minority cultures are celebrated and they are not looked at as a threat. So here the universalism of Nehru can be critiqued, because sometime in the issue of, let's say, in the language of, let's say, nationalism, or let's say universal identity or big identity, smaller identities are not given appropriate place. And here Nehru would be very much critiqued by Baba Sahib Ambedkar in his small booklet, The States and Minority, where he has said that it is often seen that the majority community, the upper caste, argue their interest in nationalist language. So nationalism has become a tool in the hands of the upper class, the elites, while any legitimate interest or demand by the lower caste who are marginalized, if they articulate, they might be rejected, or they might be demonized by the people sitting at the top, by saying that these are communalist ideology. So one thing we have to keep in mind, that there are two connotations of communalism. One connotation of communalism is where the majority community uses its religious identity to oppress minority community. That communalism is very threatening, and that must be opposed. But sometime what has happened, that the religious minority community, or maybe the marginalized caste, sometimes they use their identity to get their legitimate dues. And sometime what has happened is that those sitting at the top, they criticize, they try to reject those identity in the name of communalism. But the demands of, let's say, the minority community, or the legitimate issues of minority community articulated around, let's say, community identity, should not be called communalism, but they are communitarian assertion. And communitarian assertion, if it is being articulated by the marginalized caste, and it is articulated by the minority community, these are progressive. This should not be seen as a threat. And that is why here I have some disagreement with Nehru's idea of secularism, or maybe nationalism. Of course, Nehru's idea of nationalism and secularism is progressive when we compare it with, let's say, the Hindutva ideology, because Hindutva ideology is reactionary. Hindutva ideology is based on serving the interest of the, let's say, dominant classes. It has not taken up the issues of the toiling masses, and it has collaborated with the elites and with the British Raj. Here, Nehru's analysis absolutely correct. But when national identity is used by the elites against the minority interest, against the minority culture, against the minority religion, against the minority interest, against the marginalized interest, against the Adivasis and STs and lower caste and Dalits, then that should not be upheld. And that is why, while Nehru's idea of secularism is very progressive when it is critiquing, let's say, Hindutva ideology, but if the same ideology is the same idea is used to silence lower caste and minority and a smaller identity, then it is not very progressive. And we have somehow also seen that centralizing tendency within the Indian state is because of the dominant ideology of nationalism. So nationalism could be of different varieties. One kind of nationalism would be the reactionary nationalism, which is being championed by, let's say, the Hindu communal forces. But sometimes the elites, the modernizing elites, they also talk about nationalism of a different kind, where they believe in centralizing tendency. They believe that power should be concentrated. They fear minority, let's say, culture, or if they do not fear, they do not look at them in a very positive way. They at best they want to tolerate it for some time. They want minority to give up their identity and then become the part of the national culture. That is also not very progressive ideology, because we have seen that in the name of in the name of nationalism, in the name of dominant culture, how the minority have faced the tyranny of the majority. So here we have to critique, I think, Nehru, and we have to also keep in mind that what is national culture? What is national culture? National culture in most cases is defined by the majoritarian interest. So the majoritarian interest is always projected as national culture, while the minority culture is always rejected as reactionary. That is also very much the fact. So you will find that the festival of the majority community will be celebrated in the public. I think that celebration will assume the national character, while the minority religion is not much celebrated. So we have to keep in mind why how Nehru is progressive in many ways, and how Nehruvian idea had sometime worked against the minority community. And I think this is, if you read uh, Maulana Azad, and in his book India Wins Freedom, we have to we get this idea that how the majority, that majoritarian tendency, and how in the name of national culture or centralizing a state, how the minorities' interests were not taken up, and how minority concerns were not dealt with. That is why it paved the way for the partition. So the partition can be explained in a very easy way by saying that, okay, one party was very adamant and it wanted to have Pakistan, but the real diagnosis of Pakistan, or maybe the division of the country, can be done when we look at minority and their interest, whether they were properly addressed, whether they were not addressed. And can we argue that the division of the division of the country, partition, could have been averted had the minority interest been legitimately addressed? So the Nehru was also the man who believed in the power of the economic forces, and he believed that communal problems can be addressed by modernizing tendency, by development of, let's say, yeah, economy, and also big industry. But that has not happened. We have seen that India has grown a lot in last 75 years or 80 years, but the communal problem remains there. And now sometime we may get this feeling that now the communal problem has become much bigger when we have become much more developed. And Nehru has also said that that the Hindu communists and Muslim communists are being led by the rich upper class group. That is true in one sense. That today also we have seen that the communal organizations, Hindu communal organization, is basically being led by the elites, by the rich. But I think we have to also keep in mind that they are not successful because it is only led by the elites. It is also successful because they are able to get the support of a large chunk of the subaltern groups. And why subaltern groups have been supporting them? It is very easy to call them that they are living in false consciousness, or they have become communal. That is how, let's say, many people will argue. But I would say a very different thing, that the marginalized communities were not given appropriate representations, appropriate place by the so-called the secularist party. So that is why I think the Hindutva forces were able to make inroads into the marginalized community by saying that, look at, here is the party which calls itself nationalist, which calls itself secularist, which calls itself the big champion of, I think, social justice, but the party has not done much for you. So is it not the time for you to come to, let's say, our party, give us a new chance? And that is how it has been able to make some inroads. And when I say that the Hindutva party has been able to make inroads, I do not mean it that the upper castes are not supporting. I think upper castes are supporting, I think, the Hindutva forces in a big way. I think they have become the big supporters of, let's say, Hindutva forces, and they were the people who were the biggest beneficiaries of, let's say, the Nehruvian policies. But now, after 1990s, with the rise of the BJP, they have shifted their loyalty from the Congress party to BJP. So the Congress party should also think at this time, I think, that why there has been a shift of, let's say, the lower caste and marginalized community from Congress, which calls itself as the champion of, let's say, lower caste or maybe the marginalized community and the poor, why they have been gone to the party which has been traditionally the supporter of the rich and the elites and the religious elites and the landed elites. It is only because of the fact that the secularist party have been able to get the votes of the marginalized community for the long time, but they did not do much, and in the leadership they were not given the key posts. So there they feel some sense of alienation. That is why that alienation has been exploited by the Hindutva forces, and that is why there has been a shift. There are, of course, so many other regions, and I think the BJP has also been supported by, let's say, the big corporate forces. That factors I am not ignoring, but the point which I am trying to say, that secularism, the empty talk of secularism and nationalism without incorporating the interest of the marginalized community, without giving proper representation, without giving the proper dues to the marginalized community, cannot take us long, cannot make the secular party strong, cannot strengthen the foundation of the secular party. And that is why we have seen that how in the recent past secularist parties have been defeated by the communist forces. So my criticism of Nehruvian idea of secularism would be that, okay, your criticism of Hindu communalists, that it is reactionary, it has collaborated with the British Raj, it is led by the rich, it is absolutely fine. Your criticism that these forces are reactionary, these forces believe in superstitions, these are backward looking forces, these are absolutely perfect. But to say that the reactionary forces will be dealt with by the economic progress, that is not also giving the true picture. That is also turning back from the reality. Indian society is very much based on the caste. 85% of Indians are those who are marginalized community, who call themselves Bahujan, Dalits, Adivasi, backward classes, women. I think if they are not given proper representation, and then to believe that economic forces will take care of everything, that is not true. And that is why we have seen that the BJP and the RSS, which were a marginalized force since after independence till 1990s, but how of late they have been able to use the weakness, the failure of the secularist party to get power. And once they have got the power, they are trying their best to weaken the foundation of secular democracy. And one problem with the Nehru is that in his analysis, I think caste, Dalits, Adivasi, these issues are completely missing. He is absolutely right to criticize, I think, Hindu Mahasabha and Hindu right by saying that they have worked against Hindu-Muslim unity. These forces have been trying to create religious polarization. The Hindu Mahasabha is against Gandhian philosophy. The Hindu Mahasabha is collaborating with, let's say, British Raj. The Hindu Mahasabha is not supporting the idea that British rule should be criticized. These criticisms are absolutely correct and Nehru is bang on target. But then the problem the Nehru has is that Nehru is trying to reject, I think, Hindutva forces, I think Hindu communalism. At the same time, he is also not very positive about the little identity. So here I would like to disagree with Nehru, and I think this is the weak area of a Nehruvian ideology. But what is the biggest strength of Nehru? The biggest strength of Nehru is that he has argued, and his analysis is absolutely perfect, where he has said that the majority communalism tries itself to project itself as nationalism. Okay, so and that is how the majority communalism tries to project itself as nationalist force, and this is how it gets legitimacy among the people, and slowly by having legitimacy it captures power, and once it has captured the power it tries to weaken the foundation of democracy, republicanism, and all progressive ideology. And let me quote Nehru here from his article, Tribune, which was published on November 30, 1933. And then I should stop here. Nehru has said, and I quote, "It must be remembered that the communalism of a majority community must of necessity bear a closer resemblance to nationalism than the communalism of a minority group. One of the best tests of its true nature is what relation it bears to the national struggle. If it is politically reactionary or lays stress on communal problems rather than national ones, then it is obviously anti-national." So Nehru is saying that the majority communalism, not minority communalism, has got this tendency to legitimize itself in the garb of nationalism. So we could see here that the communist forces today have captured power, and they have projected themselves as the biggest champion of nationalism, the biggest champion of patriotism. On the other hand, they have tried to project those who are the opponents of Hindutva ideology as anti-nationals. So Nehru was very visionary that he was able to see through the game plan of the Hindutva forces way back in 1933, some 90 years back, and he has said that be aware of majority communalism, which tries to project itself, tries to sell itself, tries to legitimize itself as nationalist forces. On the other hand, it tries to delegitimize others as anti-national. But what is the reality? That majority communalism, according to Nehru, are real anti-nationals. Okay, so we have to keep in mind that those who are today call themselves nationalists are anti-nationalists. And what is the test? How Nehru is going to identify that who are anti-national, who are communalists, even though they project themselves as as nationalists? Nehru has said that whosoever talks about nationalism, we should try to see what is their policy vis-a-vis, let's say, freedom struggle. So Nehru has said that if we look at communalist forces, even though they sell themselves as nationalist forces, majority communist forces, we will see that they are not taking part in nationalist struggle. On the other hand, they are cooperating with the British Raj, and they are busy dividing people on religious line. So we could see what Nehru has said today and its relevance today, that those who call today nationalists are not nationalists, but they are basically vegetarian communalists. On the other hand, those who are talking about the rights of the people, they are being stereotyped with the help of, let's say, pliant media, that they are anti-national. So this is very a strong point of Nehru, that Nehru has tried to expose the Hindutva forces, the communist forces among the majority community, and Nehru has said that they are very dangerous, very, very dangerous. Majority communalism is very dangerous because it has a tendency to project itself, to sell itself as a nationalist forces, and to demonize other. But this is very easy, according to Nehru, to identify whether they are really nationalists or whether they are communalists. Nehru has said that look at their policies vis-a-vis British Raj, and you will find that they have been all collaborator. So this is the strength point of the Nehru. So today we have discussed Nehru idea of nationalism, communalism, and he has basically criticized thoroughly majoritarian communalism, and he has shown how it has been dangerous to India because it has got this tendency to project itself as nationalist forces. But my disagreement with Nehru is this, uh, that Nehru has also not been very positive. Nehru has also not been very receptive. Nehru has not been very appreciative of the local and marginalized communities' identity. And he believes that the bigger identity, the most important identity is national identity. And another weak point of Nehru is that he believes that economic development will take care of, let's say, reactionary ideology, but it has not happened. Today we see more communalism. Today we have seen that the economic development has not done away with the reactionary ideology. Today our society is very much into reactionary ideology, and we will find that how secularism has been being attacked by the regime which is in power today. So in this way Nehru is not very correct, but yes, Nehru is visionary when he has said that majority communalism is very, very dangerous because it has got its tendency to project itself as nationalist forces, but we should not get duped by it. This is what I have to say on Nehru's ideologies on, let's say, nationalism and communalism. Please share your view, give your comments. What do you think about it? Thank you very much.